Brenda, can we probably switch now to poll number 3 then, to start getting a view of the science and measurement that people are doing in the marketplace, please?
We can, of course, and this is always an interesting area and what I'm sure people are going to want to find out answers to. So for those offering MDF programs, are you able to measure and report on the program return on investment? I'm sure everyone gets asked questions about it in order to justify it. So we still have people submitting their answers. Oh, it's pretty close. And we'll just give that another couple of seconds. And again, as I said earlier, if you have any questions for the panel, do pop them into the question box. Okay, I'm going to close that off there now, John, and pass it back to you to discuss further on ROI.
Wonderful, thanks, Brenda. Kenneth, I may start with you in this one. Like, this is a topic that exercises many layers of organizations, return on investment, and the whole area of channel spend. MDF is no different. So what are you hearing, Kenneth? I know you've recently come back from both customer meetings and a number of channel events recently. What's happening in this whole area of ROI from what you're hearing? I think we may have lost you there, Kenneth, briefly. You may be on mute.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Apologies. Yeah, no, thanks, John. And we hear lots. I suppose, you know, there are a lot of moving parts to ensure the successful execution of an MDF program. And key to that is measuring, I suppose, the return on investment, or the return on investment of the various activities we just discussed. And as the old saying goes, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Now, ultimately, partner engagement will, I suppose, tell you if it's working or not. And I would say, you know, one of the things we always hear is trying to make it easy for, you know, for partners to access the program, to understand the program, to understand the different layers of activities you offer, what you need to do to align to those activities and support them. So we always kind of say to people, keep that as visual as possible. You know, literally get into your partner portal, have one page for your MDF, and so on. And kind of coming back then to what Mimish discussed there a little bit around the proofs of performance. So this is kind of really, I always think the nub of it is, if you spend time thinking about those proofs of performance, are they aligned with your company or corporate strategy? Are they aligned with your channel strategy? And are they aligned with, you know, the latest and greatest that you want to spend those marketing dollars? So I would always say to people, spend a lot of time, invest time up front thinking about those activities. And as you think about those activities, kind of break it down into, you know, are they aligned with your strategy? How do I measure those activities? How do I represent them to the partner community? And then how do I measure those activities? And if you do that, and I suppose overlay on that, what are the proofs of performance that I can ask my partner to provide when they do those activities, to clearly prove they did do them and align to it? Because by doing that, it actually makes the whole claim process very easy. So we always say to people, kind of invest time in thinking about those proofs of performance, and through those, capturing the data you need to measure the ROI of a program, of the specific activity on the program, and then pushing those right to the front end. And if you do it in the right way, you can actually make your claim process very simple by ensuring a well-defined proof of performance aligns with a particular activity that you offer dollars to the partner for, and therefore, you know, as they load up those proofs of performance as part of the claim, you capture the data that you want to see, are those activity types working? And then once you kind of have that in place and you start to measure the proofs of performance against the different activity types, you'll start to see what works and what doesn't. And, you know, there's no one size fits all. Again, I don't know, one of the guys discussed there about, you know, the different partner types or the maturity of the different partner types. So what works for one doesn't necessarily work for another. So you might have to, you know, change the activity, spread it around a little bit, have regional or country variations, have variations by partner tier, etc. And as we know now, there's so many different partner types. You might even have to vary, you know, what do you offer an MSP versus a distributor versus a VAR, etc. But, you know, once you kind of do all of that and you start to measure the ROI on the activities, now you're in a position to say, well, this is working or this isn't working, or it's working for a certain cohort of my partners, I keep going with it, or I don't keep going with it. So, you know, there's simple examples I can give of that. So if you say, I don't know, an activity type like lead generation, I'm going to push that out there, I'm going to offer you X dollars. So when they're uploading their proofs of performance for lead gen, make sure that you know, force upon them a template to show what are the leads they generated for that $2,000 or $500 or whatever it is you gave them to do that. So you record that. And I think it was Ryan measured, you got to be, or Ryan mentioned earlier, you have to be patient, because those measurements might not come in for a quarter or indeed 2 quarters. And if you're going through tier 2 channels, it could even be 3 quarters before you start to see that. And that point around ROI there for measuring that much later is often where people bump into finance, and finance say, well, you can't prove this is working. It's not like another channel program, and then you struggle to fight for the dollars. Because I often see that with companies that are, you know, starting or have an immature MDF program, they always get pushback because they can't prove it. So, you know, that's why you have to measure the ROI, and you have to be patient, because in the channel, you know, it's not the same as direct business. What takes weeks direct can take months or quarters in the indirect channel, and that's ultimately how you justify the program, John. And they're the kind of, you know, they're the kind of things we're seeing.
Great, thanks, Kenneth. And I agree. I think good feedback there, Kenneth. Particularly for anybody that may have joined that's an emerging vendor going to channel for the first time. Keep those ROI measures simple. It might be, you know, you do an event and you just want to get 20 leads from that event. Tie that back to the number of leads that really happened as the proof of performance, and then look and see if there's revenue downstream from that. Mimish, if I could maybe get your feedback, anything you'd like to add to that in the context of your business, how you measure the ROI, and is there key metrics that you use to achieve that?
Yeah, I think Kenneth hit on a very good point when you mentioned be very realistic with the time needed to measure. I think that's something in the channel. We are constantly, even within our company, we're constantly having to educate other key stakeholders, including finance, even sales, who don't fully understand the sort of channel trajectory of time and how things take place. So I just want to reiterate that when Kenneth said that, it just struck something, because of course on our end, we want to be realistic as well, right? You need to set the right expectations. It's not just magic. You agree to do X amount of activities, and you're going to drive demand, and you're going to see, you know, these amazing leads immediately and close one business right behind that. So you've got to be realistic. But having said that, I mean, it's very important that everybody's accountable, right? The good thing is, once you establish your activities, so these are the activities that align to your programs, to be very, very clear up front with your partners, what's the expected ROI? So you're in it together, right? And then with that comes the proof of performance. So, you know, it shouldn't be like this thing that you dread. It should be really interesting and exciting for one to be able to come back and be able to look at the activities versus the ROI and what came out of it, right? So I just believe the transparency, the realisticness is important, and then really making sure if you have a stick, there's the carrot, and it has to all be realistic. So that's what we're doing within our program, and I'm sure others have that as well. Make sure that you're thinking through each activity, and you're thinking very clearly through what you expect from a return on investment for each one of those sets of activities, and that your partners understand what they're signing up for, right? And then between using the tool to measure, what's really good about when you do business planning and joint marketing planning, you have the opportunity to revisit and have those discussions through the quarter. So it's not sort of a one thing you do and then you come back at the end of the quarter and you set up a meeting. You should be having that dialogue through the process and having a conversation. And, you know, and in some cases you have to encourage your partners, because remember I talked about marketing maturity, not being understanding the partner's marketing maturity. You've got to kind of keep guiding them and pushing them through the process. I just think that discipline is important. And then finally, I cannot reiterate this as much, is also learning from it. It's okay to say, you know what, we missed the mark. Even if the mistake is coming from you and you've guided a partner, it's okay to say we missed the mark and adjust. I think if you have all of those levels of discipline built into the process, you'll have a good handle on what's happening.
Thanks,
Mimish. Yeah, John, I'd just like to come back in just for a second, sorry. So yeah, just to want to kind of iterate, you know, something Mimish said there as well, is that like it is exciting if you do it the right way. I just want to, you know, let people know it really does work. It might take a little bit of time, but rest assured, you know, MDF is a key part of your channel strategy, or should be, and it absolutely does drive sales down, you know, down over time. So, you know, you got to make sure you do that. And another interesting thing we see is, Mimish touched on it there, the activities. If they don't work, that's fine. You know, everybody makes mistakes. But what we've seen is the inverse of that as well. Some of the things partners do very successful, certain partners do very successful. If you have, you know, certain activity types, you can actually start to cross-pollinate those learnings from your partners into other partners as well. So by measuring it, you know, you can learn as well, because some partners are very smart at how they use that money and certain activities that they do. And then you can say, well, now that I can see that works, I'm going to get everybody to do it, etc. So, you know, be open to that idea as well.
Yeah, and Kenneth, sorry, finally, one thing I forgot to mention in that process as well, when I was talking about partners' marketing maturity, some partners are so used to wanting to do just events or trade shows or seminars, right? And you have to guide them in that conversation. You have to really help them understand how to spread those funds across the board to really build a holistic marketing plan. They can be resistant, but you got to show them the value, right? So that's another part of the process.
Super. Ryan, anything was left unsaid that you want to add to that? That was a great set of inputs there.
There was one thing that came to mind actually around the measures themselves, which is I'd encourage people to think about what's the best source of data for their results. So by that I mean traditionally you would ask the partner, okay, you did your activity, so how many or how much of X did you generate? And they give you a number. So have a think about how reliable that number will be, particularly, you know, assuming you're not running a program that only has 10 partners in it, but you've potentially got hundreds. So you're, you know, you're collating that data. How clean is that data? Are you going to be able to analyze it? Is somebody interpreting your number of X as number of Y and giving you a different number? You know, number of leads. What does a lead mean? What does that means different things to different people. So the direction we've gone in at Extreme is to try to measure as much as possible using our own systems, our own data. The one thing we do rely on out of those three methods I outlined earlier for the attribution is obviously the contact data of who did the partner engage in this activity. But we're still not asking the partner to tell us how many. We're just saying, who did you engage with? We will analyze that data and we will determine, based on opportunities we see in pipeline being closed, we will determine the level of influence of those activities. So that's not asking, we're not asking the partners to tell us what was the result. In almost 100% of the cases, we are determining that ourselves using our own methods, because we've determined that we think our reporting is more reliable than the potentially 100 different interpretations that a partner might give to a results field.